Right now, the Bitcoin debate is splitting down the middle. Half think this is accumulation, and the other half thinks it's distribution. And both sides are arguing about price, which is exactly the problem. Price doesn't tell you what institutions are doing. Volume does. And when I pulled up the BTC volume profile this morning, the answer was right here. Let me show you what it says. And before we go into today's chart, look at what the terminal flagged a couple of days ago. We had a buy on Ford Motor, we had a buy on Amazon, we had a buy on Netflix, and we had a buy on futures. But back to Bitcoin. So here's why this question is harder than it looks, and why most people are still getting it wrong, even as Bitcoin pushes toward 75,000. On the 4-hour chart, the picture has become clearer since the start of the week. We are above POC, we are above the AVWAP on the 4-hour. VWAP deviation is now sitting at 4.9%. Regime is bullish, equity layer is bullish, and the risk layer is bullish. This means that we are late in the cycle and we have now an inflationary pump. And critically, the transition level I was watching at 72,900 has broken to the upside. The 4-hour bullish structure is confirmed. But now watch what happens when I switch to the daily. This is the same asset. It is the same price. Still a very different picture. On the daily regime, the reading is still bearish. And the number I want you to focus on is right here. Negative 10.5%. 3 days ago, that deviation was minus 13%, so it's improved. Price is moving back towards the daily AVWAP, which is the green line we see here. And the anchor right now is around 83,400. But still, we are 10.5 below the institutional fair value on the daily. So the gap is still the story. I'm going to show you the signal that tells you what happens to that gap next. But first, the most important number on this chart. The daily bias is still bearish. We have a bear swing of 190 bars. We have a stability that is 0 out of 2. No confirmed floor on the daily yet. But the confidence score has moved. It's reading now 11 up from 8. This is a higher conviction behind the current regime. Now, look at this. The volume compression is still coiled, and the compression reading has increased since earlier this week. The spring is still loaded, and now price has started moving. That's the setup traders wait for. When compression is this high and price starts moving with it, the release tends to be extended. So this isn't a one-day pop. The volume structure is pointing towards a sustained move. The VP delta is still at -7, which is neutral. But here's what matters. Neutral delta during an upward price move means selling pressure isn't increasing as price rises. That is constructive. So the bearish regime label is still technically correct. But what it's describing is a bear market regime under significant pressure from below. We have built a base. The volume says the floor is in. Now back to the 4-hour, because the picture here has developed significantly. Earlier this week, I was watching 72,850 as the critical transition level. And here's what happened. Price broke through it clean with volume and delta confirmation. That's exactly what the analysis called, and the spring started releasing to the upside. We are now at 74,800 on the 4-hour. The VWAP deviation is almost 5% plus, and we still have equities and risks that are checked green. That's almost a full confirmation stack. The strong deviations signals that were stacking at the 72 area that told us there was some distribution happening, that distribution zone got absorbed. And now price has cleared it. So the volume profile terms, buyers showed up, absorbed the overhead supply and pushed through. That's not distribution. That's accumulation completing its cycle. The next level I'm watching on the 4-hour is that carry through towards the daily AVWAP at 83,400. That's the reversion target. We've covered roughly 20% of the distance in 3 days. I want to show you one signal that has changed since the start of this analysis, because this one upgrades the entire read. 3 days ago, both timeframes were reading Cantillon Flow inflationary pump, already bullish macro volume signal. Today, we see that the Cantillon Flow has upgraded to full risk on. This is a regime step change. Full risk on means the macro volume confluence has shifted from inflationary positioning to active institutional risk deployment. The macro bonus is now at 3+, composite is +6 out of 9. And there's one more signal that appeared this morning. The bond equity correlation is reading stress recovery at 0.79. This signal fires when the macro stress environment suppressing risk assets begin to normalize, when bonds and equities stop moving in lockstep, which is what this measures. It historically coincides with the early stages of a sustained risk-on rally. All three checks are now green across both timeframes. That wasn't true 3 days ago. The macro layer has confirmed what the volume was already reading. This is the kind of regime upgrade that goes into the daily brief the moment it fires. Every morning across hundreds of instruments. Go into cantillonresearch.com. The link is in the description. But first, let's look at the verdict. So, accumulation or distribution? 3 days ago, the answer was both. Accumulation at 68 to 70,000, distribution overhead at around 75,000. Today, the answer is clearer. The accumulation call was right. The 68 floor held, which is also where the puck is. The coil spring started releasing. The 72,850 transition level broke to the upside. Cantillon Flow upgraded to full risk. The distribution that was sitting at 72,000 to 74,000 got absorbed. That's not a bearish signal. That's a fuel for the next leg up. The daily regime is still technically bearish. We are still 10.5% below the AVWAP at 83,400. But the volume structure is pointing toward a reversion to that level. That's a 12% move from current price. The level I'm watching is now the 74,750 level, previous week's high. A clean close above that with expanding volume opens the path to the 83,000 and the AVWAP reversion. The daily coil compression is still loading. What's released so far is the first phase, not the full move. The stress recovery signal on bond equity correlation says the macro headwinds are easing. That matters for Bitcoin more than almost any other asset right now. So the volume told the truth. Accumulation at 68,000. Distribution absorbed at 73,000. Spring releasing to the upside. So what's the 74,750? That's the next decision point. The IVT indicator and the daily brief are on cantillonresearch.com. The link is below. And if you find this useful, subscribe to this channel. I do this on gold, on S&P, on oil, and everything else regularly. Drop a comment below. Do you think we cleared the 74,500 this week? I read every one of them. So see you in the next one. Trade safe. Bye bye.